I'm Trevor Babb with the Contemporary Guitar Blog, and my guest today is Aaron Larget-Caplan, who is here to talk about the new Lullaby Project. And Aaron has just released his third CD as a iteration of this project, where he's commissioning composers to write lullabies for solo classical guitar. Aaron, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Trevor. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So this is a project that's gone on for about 10 years. You have 3 CDs, more than 50 pieces at this point, I think. What inspired you to start doing this?
Well, the first premiere took place in 2007. So it's a few years beyond 10, actually. And there are 3 CDs. There's now 2 anthologies of scores that are published in partnership with the American Composers Alliance. And back 2006, right? I think before I met you, I put out my first CD, which was just kind of almost a typical, first guitar CD. It had Barrios, some Pujol, Dion, and
All the hits.
it had hits. And then it also had 3 composers of premieres, and it also had some Brouwer. And the Brouwer is important. So the new pieces were there's 2 new dances by Dan Pinkham, another one for late Dan Pinkham, wonderful composer, Lior Navolk, an Israeli composer, and then one of my favorite all-time pieces, Kevin Siegfried's Tracing a Wheel on Water, which is the title track of the CD. Very amazing Reich type of vibe to it. Very cool piece. And on the CD, I recorded Brouwer's Afro-Cuban Lullaby. And people would just go nuts for that piece. Didn't matter what else I was playing. Flamenco, Bach, contemporary music. They'd be like, oh, that little lullaby. And it pissed me off. And I was just like, seriously? It's nothing. Brouwer doesn't like it. I took a master class with him, and he just sat there and goes, a real composer would know not to repeat something over and over and over again. And so I was like, okay. And my wife said I should do an album of lullabies. And I don't like that idea. I really didn't, because music to me is an active participatory endeavor. Listener and performer, they both have to be there. And it's not just tracks to relax to, which is a horrible way. That's the death throes of classical music. And I was doing an arrangement of Summertime for a little chamber group, and I had the original score and a copy of the original of Gershwin's Porgy and Bess, and it says lullaby in parentheses under Summertime. And I was like, really? That's a lullaby? And at the same time, I had found Takemitsu's amazing popular song arrangements, which included Summertime. And a bell went off, and it was just like, new lullabies. That's an idea. And I have to give credit where it's due. I had also been obsessed with David Starobin's new dance CD album.
Yeah.
Fantastic album. I played one of the pieces on my senior recital by Apostolos Paraskevas. Like, that was just, I used to listen to that album, and it's the perfect amount of Elliott Carter, 3.5 minutes. Like, I could handle that. And so I took all of this, and with my love of contemporary music, I mean, I really love contemporary music. I think it's important to play music that represents our time, and composers are alive. Everyone's battling about what did Bach or Beethoven mean. It's like, well, here's a composer, and he's like, oh, I like this, I like that. Ooh, why don't you choose? What a way to approach music. It's just amazing. So I premiered Lullaby number 66 2 months ago. Or early May, in May, 1 month ago. So it's been, I didn't know it was going to go on this long.
Yeah. I mean, with 66 pieces, it's like, how do you choose when you're putting together a concert program, right? There's so many.
Right. And that is, and maybe I shouldn't, but when a composer writes me a piece and says, will you read through this? I'm like, dude, this is music. This is magic in a sense. I have to read through this piece. And I think I tallied 70+% had never written for guitar. So it's really to bridge the chasm between audience and contemporary music.
Yeah.
And composers writing for guitar. As you know, not every composer is up for that
Yeah.
because it's intimidating. Well, who's afraid of a lullaby? And
Sure.
I've kind of gone with that. And so composers keep writing pieces, and I break it down for like a program. I look at, okay, how much time do I have to prepare? That does make a difference. What pieces have I not played in a while? What else is on the program? If I have a lot of tremolo pieces on a program, I don't want to play a lullaby that has a lot of tremolo. But I also I've kind of find, at least with this latest album, Drifting, I divide the pieces kind of into spacious and active. And it's amazing. I mean, I can kind of go through the whole album and say, okay, I did 3 spacious, active, started with a couple active pieces, went to 3 spacious, 2 active, rather than just keys, because I have 12-tone lullabies. I have quarter tone, polyphonic. I have Indian, like native, India for Carnatic inspired lullabies. So scales don't always work as a means of defining it, but I keep playing them, and that's how we go.
And you don't have any composers who are duplicated in these 66 pieces, right?
Yes, I do. I probably have like 55 total composers, or 58. Francine Trester, amazing composer who teaches at Berkeley. She's a Yale grad. She's written me 3 lullabies, all of which are recorded. John McDonald, who's at Tufts University, he's written 2. Jacob Mashak has written, I think, 2 or 3, but I've only recorded 1. And I have a couple of, some composers just, hey, can I send you another piece? And it's actually kind of nice, because I find that first piece is learning who this composer is. How do they manipulate these dots on a page and what do they mean? When they use crescendo, do they want it to also speed up? Happens at times. When they give an exact rhythm, is it an improvisatory aspect? Is it supposed to sound improvisatory? Or is it, no, I want it robotic? And these are conversations that I'm grateful. These people these are my teachers, all of these composers. I've learned more about music granted, it's taken me 14 years, but it's been good. It's been a really cool project.
So you've worked with more than 50 composers. So what actually attracts you to working with a composer? What is it about someone's music that you hear that's like, I need a lullaby from this person? I would imagine that not every single composer that you come across with is like, yeah, I want Elliot Carter to write me a lullaby, right?
That would have been cool.
Actually.
I dream of a Ligeti lullaby. That was because I just think he would have something in there that would make it so spicy. It's a good question. At the beginning, especially the first album, it was a lot of local composers that I knew, because I have a very limited budget. I think on the first album, I paid like $100 per composer, which is like basically charity and
pizza money.
Yeah. But I was like, look, this is the project. I want to record it. I thought it would be done. And then people kept sending me lullabies, and I was like, well, okay, we'll keep going. Some of it was, I was at a concert and I would hear someone's music and be like, oh, wow, that was cool. The little hair stands up on the back of your neck, and I know Scott Wheeler, that's who I'm working with on another collaboration at the moment. That was exactly what happened. Is I was at the concert and I was just blown away by his music. Kevin Siegfried, who's on the first album as well, New Lullaby, he's on my Tracing a Wheel album as well. He had written for me already. So I was like, would you like to write a lullaby? And he was into the project. So a lot of the composers I knew prior, they may not have written for me, but I had met them because I go to non-guitar concerts. I would go to contemporary music concerts. Boston has, I'm very lucky, like probably New Haven, there's a lot of contemporary music. And so I would just go to concerts and talk to people. And it's a nice icebreaker. Have you written for guitar? I have a lullaby. And
Yep.
as many as I've had, I've probably had quadruple amounts say no. The internet has helped. I started a Facebook group in like 2008 or 9 for the new Lullaby Project, when the CD, right before the CD came out. And that was because one composer posted, hey, I wrote this lullaby, come to the premiere. And a friend of his said, oh, that's a cool project. And I'd like to write a lullaby. And they'd approach me and say, can I write you a lullaby? And what am I supposed to say? No. Like, no, that's just not how I function. So, and that's some of my favorite lullabies have come that way. I do have rules. Like it can't be a dance. I mean, a slow waltz is one thing, the rocking, but also it can't be violent. I've had to say no to a violent lullaby. I'm just like, that goes against it. So, is there someone's music I wouldn't accept? There's people I wouldn't accept. I don't know if there's someone's music I wouldn't accept. There's a big delineation there. I like to think music is separate, but there's also people that I just won't play their music. That's just,
Yeah.
There you go.
We won't flesh that out.
Well, look, not the problem with music is it's made by people, and the problem with people is people. And
right.
Yeah. So there are people I love working with, and there are people that I've hit heads with, and then we become really good friends. And it's true. Thomas Reed, a wonderful composer who was out of Burlington, he's now retired in upstate New York. He wrote a lullaby for me, and the premiere took longer than I wanted to happen. And he wrote to me, he's like, look, I gave the lullaby to someone else. And I wasn't paying him at the time. I was like, not cool. But I'll tell you what, I'll move it up, a few months in the premiere, but you have to come to the concert. Came to the concert, and after the concert, he was very apologetic. He realized he was being an old curmudgeon and asked if he could write me something else. Nice. And I'm like, what do you say when someone wants to write you? What do you want me to write you? You say concerto, right? That's the knee-jerk reaction. I said concerto, but it'll never get played. So how about a string quartet with guitar? And he wrote a quintet, a wonderful quintet called Capricci. And then he liked how the cellist and I played on that quintet a lot. Like there's a wonderful little duo of like the cello and guitar really interacting well. So he wrote a cello guitar piece. And so it's like, and now we talk to each other every month, and it's like, how you doing? What's going on? And so it's weird. We work in an industry or an art that is all about communication. We have to communicate these thoughts or dots on a page or feelings and so on. We talk about this. And some of the hardest things is communicating with each other. Mm-hmm. And so I try and take the position of what does the composer want? I'm kind of the antithesis of Segovia. I've read a lot about Segovia, and I love Segovia. I think he's a great player, but I could kick him for what he said to Ravel about don't write for the guitar. I won't play it. I won't play your music, and how he ignored Stravinsky. I mean, I just think if Debussy had written for guitar, we'd be in a different world. So I look at a piece and I go, this composer matters. May not be famous, but they matter. And what are they trying to get across? And is it hard? Some of them are extremely hard. Some have a lot of editing, but that has made me better, I think.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, this was not on my pre-list of questions, but you would expect lullabies to be pretty easy to play, actually. Think of it as like light, fluffy music. And right. You just said, that there are some hard pieces that have come all across your desk. So What are some of the most challenging things that a composer has given you?
Oh my God. There's a wonderful composer, Vineet Shende. He's at Bowdoin College. Amazing composer. He played guitars from Chicago. Parents are from India. and studied guitar to blues and then classical guitar, then sitar. And he's an amazing composer. And I have scored a tour of C sharp and G sharp, I think, on this one. Yeah, I have to go up on the third, down on the fourth. And it is, I'm doing nut side plucking and playing on this side. So I'll like hold a chord and then do kind of get this kind of music box aspect on the left side, which is also in a rhythm, a raga rhythm, or tala rhythm that is like, it's not natural to me as a Western musician. Really hard. So technically really hard. I have a 3-voice polyphonic lullaby by Alan Fletcher. It's beautiful. He sent it to me as a keyboard piece. Here's a score. But 3 voices. Is this playable? And I wanted to really make it happen. And he had every phrase mark. I mean, it is so beautiful. I just want to show how beautiful this score is. Here, it's in 2 staves, and we don't get this in classical guitar music. There's no fingerings in this piece, okay? And this is 1 guitar, but look at the phrase markings. He has multiple dynamics happening. And when I saw this score, I was like, oh, this is beautiful. And he wrote it in bass, clef, and treble. And I was like, no. So I redid it because I just don't, it takes too much thought in my head. I can solfege it better than I can play it. And, this was very hard. It's just to get these chords and get the legato. I don't have a pedal, but it is so rewarding. And it's 26 measures. And it's like 2.5 minutes, and I probably spent as much, like a Bach fugue, and that's how I accepted it.
Difficult.
Yeah, it's you have to be very creative. So there are pieces I won't let students play. Like, I want to learn that piece. I'm like, not yet. And then there are pieces that are right up there that are just, like, black is the color of my true love's hair. Like, they have that type of vibe to it. And I'm like, check this out. I think there's a difference between new and difficult for the most part. Like, there are technically difficult pieces. A lot of people, I think, find new music difficult, but they've heard a piece once. And I really try not to judge a piece on a reading or on a single listening. Unless I go cool, if I don't like it, I'm like, oh, I need to listen to that again and again and again.
Right. I've had the same kind of experience with composers that I've worked with. I've often gotten pieces that people write for me, and on the first read through the cursor, I'm like, I don't know if I like this.
Yeah.
So you just keep going.
Yeah.
And
I think
as you keep going, the music really starts to come to life, and in a way that you didn't really see upon the first interaction with the score.
Yeah. I had, for a long time, I had a long gestation period where I would go through the piece, learn parts of it, finger it, get it all, and then I would put it aside, sometimes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and try and forget it. And my brain would work on it. Not consciously, but I'd come back and be like, why did I do that fingering? Oh, look at this. This is a very much more, here's a natural fingering. Here's this, and I could do harmonics. He repeats the melody 3 times. I'm going to ask him if I can do harmonics the 3rd time. And that kind of conversation happened a lot. There are times where I've had to say, look, this chord is impossible. Or I'll say, do you want this to be played by more people than me? And I don't mean that in an egotistical way, but if a student's going to pick up this piece and they're going to see this chord, they're going to go, I'm going to spend a month trying to learn this chord. And I'm like, if you take out that note, which maybe it's doubled or it's not the blue note, it'll work. And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no. Yeah. And that's fine with me. I'm okay with that.
Right. So the lullabies can't be a dance. They can't be violent. But what has surprised you? And there may be some overlap with the last question, but what surprised you about what a lullaby can be?
Um, the approach, I've kind of broken it down into, as I mentioned, active and passive, or spacious, I should say, in the last album. The first album I found dark and happy. Like there were warm lullabies, you're in your mother's arms, your mortgage is paid, everything is good. And then there's the dark ones, which be careful the world outside. Um, there are composers who have used the lullaby as a strict, there's a 5-1 dominant tonic relationship. Maybe there's a rocking motion in the rhythm, and that tends to be in a melody. There tends to be a melody of some kind. Even the 12-tone lullabies have melody. After that, like you would think, okay, it's a lullaby, they should all sound similar. They do not. Do not have any. That's what surprised me, is that after 66 lullabies, I cannot say there's a lullaby that sounds like another. They have characteristics that might be similar, but you would not ever mistake one for another.
Yeah.
And that has blown my mind. The sheer creativity of the composers, it's awe-inspiring. Yeah. So, like the simplicity sometimes that a composer does can create, and it's like that wows me. Scott Wheeler's lullaby, Nachtlied. It's a little nothing, and then it goes into the B section, and it's like, oh, that just okay, and then so it's like A B A C type of thing, and then the C section comes in, and he was one of the people I said, look, the melody came back another time. Can I do it in harmonics? And he goes, yes, and he sends me the score, and he wanted the bass notes in harmonics as well. So I'm sitting here going all over, like, whoa, and that was wonderful for me technically to learn how to do, because I'm not afraid of a harmonic. But the simplicity that this piece is, and the technical requirements of it, and as a musician, I see myself as a performer, but I don't want to be seen. Like, it's the music. I'm supposed to get out of the way. That's what technique is for. You can watch my hands, which every guitarist is always, you go to the guitar concert and you can see who's a guitarist, because they're all, right. What fingering is he doing, Right. And when someone tells me they just close their eyes and listen, that's it. So the most surprising thing is, and I guess I knew this, but I have done all lullaby concerts in Russia, in rural New Hampshire, Oregon, Boston, and we did a all lullaby concert at the ICA in Boston, the Contemporary Art Museum, and we had pillows on the floor, and kids could come sit, within 4 or 5 feet of me. Parents were there, and the kids were amazing. I mean, there's always a couple kids who are like start coughing, and they're little kids, but I'm playing very complex music. That was not an easy concert, and all I'm saying is this is called Lullaby for the Night. This is called Dreamcatcher. This is I just gave them the title, and they're lullabies, and the kids were awesome. So I am super impressed by that. That blows my mind, is that we tend to think of kids as, Purple Dinosaur music. And right. Every time I've done an all kids concert, parents are like, oh my God, like this is great music. And I'll say it again, copy the tobacco companies, get them young. Like this uppityness that classical music has. One composer brought her daughter to the concert at the ICA, and she told me it's the first time she's been able to bring her daughter to a concert and not feel like, oh God, she's going to make noise and everyone's going to get angry at her. Like, that's how uninviting classical music can be. And I get it. Like, you pay $75 for a ticket to go see the symphony. You
Right.
don't want a kid yelling. But at the same time, it's really depressing to see that when parents feel they can't bring their kids. And how are they
Yes,
supposed to learn? You,
absolutely.
you
Yeah,
raise a kid in.
this kind of resonates with something that I was going to ask you is that
Mhm.
like there's very much this idea of accessibility in what you're doing. And it seems like these pieces that are in these bite-sized nuggets that aren't too long, I've had students that, like they'll be learning the Arietta variations in book 3 of Suzuki and they're like, this is so long. And I'm like,
Too many pages.
let me tell you about the 23-minute piece that I play, right? And so, this whole like sprawling length of classical music can be really intimidating. I saw the same thing with community college kids when I was teaching,
Yeah.
music appreciation, or even adults in a community college, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But, these short pieces that have this kind of cultural, almost like utilitarian
Yeah.
connotation with the genre of lullaby, you're kind of breaking the ice for a lot of people with classical music. Are you really seeing that like bear fruit in some really interesting ways? Or do it may be hard when
Yeah.
you have audiences that just come to a concert and then leave and you never see them again,
Right.
but there might be some stories out there about how this is really building audiences for the future.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I mean, pre-COVID. Let's get rid of COVID.
Yeah, let's stop talking
I,
about it.
I I have done some all lullaby concerts during COVID, and so that is very. It has reached people. Like there are people who know of the project, especially. Um, I've done them for so long that there's a point where maybe it's typecasting, but it's like that's fine with me. I don't mind. It's John Cage guitar or new Lullaby Project. One day I'll do a Spanish CD and people will be like, "You play Spanish music?" Like, Um, but yeah, I've played in schools a lot. I work one of my first jobs out of New England Conservatory is working with young audiences, going in and introducing classical music, and so I've had kids from there who are like, I saw you 15 years ago. You came to my
Wow.
school, and that's one. I feel old. Two, it's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Like that is because I remember when the Denver Symphony, it was Denver at the time. That's how old this is.
Yeah.
They came to my elementary school and I was playing clarinet in band, and the clarinet player played a movement of Brahms. And I like paid attention to it. Like it was really cool. And so with lullabies, I have a couple of composers, especially who are grandparents now, and their kids remember hearing me play their lullaby when they were kids.
Oh,
Like that's cool. Yeah, and the bite-sized part, they're all 3 to 5 minutes with a couple that hit 6.
yeah.
I think there's one at 7. Um, it was meant as a short thing. I mean, the whole project was supposed to be short term, and
Right.
that we saw how that went. But it's an opportunity. If you don't like the piece, that's okay. Here's another one. And every time I talk to people, they have different favorites of this one stood out. But you've heard the album, I assume. What stood out to you? Was there
Oh my God.
something that I think I only sent you Drifting. I should get you nice.
Yeah,
I have
let
to get
me
you nice
I'm
transfigured
gonna
too.
have to consult the track list actually.
That's okay.
Um
I do too because I forget. Wait, which album is that
right.
one?
My goodness. I mean, I was really struck by the very first piece on there, actually, the sleeping guitar. I was
Yes.
like, "Oh man, like," and then how different everything else was after it. Um
Oh,
I
it
thought
has that Tadaga quote right in the beginning.
mhm.
It's like
Yeah,
that was for you, man.
right. I mean, man, it's like I also remember White Potatoes being really cool, and it might just be because of the title,
Yeah.
but
Well, and that one has the song aspect of
right,
like black is the color of my true love's
Yep.
hair.
Yep.
That is actually like that inspired by that. So it's a
Yeah.
song. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. I go back and forth. Everyone has different favorite pieces. Everyone. I'm one of the pieces I get super excited about, and this is like this week, is Anthony Green's Counting Backwards.
That one's really interesting too.
Yeah, it's slightly twisted,
Yep.
kind of like the 21st century, and yet it's straightforward. And you get the nodding head kind of going off, and and it was fun to work with him. And I'm just super, I they're all of them are just really cool. Jacob Mashak's Lullaby is the 12 tone, the single 12 tone. He wrote to me this week and he goes, I listened to the recording and thank you. I actually like the piece now. He didn't like it before. And, when you convince the composer that it's a good piece, that's a really cool feeling. And so, it's cool.
Yeah. Well, I think we talked about this a little bit more, maybe in the context of a concert program rather than packaging an album together. But, like, what's the oldest piece on Drifting? Which one's been waiting in the wings for a recording release for the longest?
I think the oldest one is 2010.
So a while ago.
Yeah, and that would have been, I think it's 2010 or 11. There's like 3 or 4. Upward by John McDonald was he was on the first album, and this was his second lullaby. Scott Sharf's Lullaby for Letting the Day Be What It Is. I met him at a concert, Sick Puppy, seminar and contemporary piano performance, piano percussion or something like this.
It's everything now, I think.
Yeah, it is everything. And he was there and I was like, I heard one of his pieces, not for guitar, and I just went up to him and said, would you like to write a lullaby? And yeah, he did. And it's that's a spacious lullaby.
Yeah.
That it's like, I love that. And then the other one, Ricardo Odriozola. Those 3 are kind of all in the same realm of time. And it's part of it, COVID, for as bad as it was, I built a studio and started recording. I have a stone foundation in my house and I had fixed my basement and it allowed me, and I talked to Steve Hunt, pianist for Alan Holdsworth for years, and also a recording engineer. He has his own studio. He had recorded my last 2 albums, Legend of Hagoromo and John Cage Guitar, and got along really well with him. And I said, look, I'm doing this because I want to come record at your place, but I can't because of COVID. And so him and a couple other engineers recommended some mics. And I built a studio and then spent a lot of time on Google figuring out how to actually record.
Yeah.
And troubleshooting, it's 90% troubleshooting. And I recorded Nights Transfigured in September, early October, which came out in November and 2020. And then right after that came out, I recorded this next album. And it's been each one, there's some different audio stuff. It's a learning process, but Steve still did the mixing and editing. Mixing and mastering. I did the editing. And then, so a lot of the order was, what pieces do I really, really want to record? And I think I recorded 35 pieces and there's only like 30 that have been on these albums. And some I recorded a couple times because when I told composers, I just recorded your piece, they'd go, well, I made some updates. So I'd re-record the piece. And so a lot of the order was like, what piece do I definitely want on this album? And then I would build around that. And I did not copy. I didn't do 2 composers on the same album. I just said that's not allowed. And I wanted some diversity. If there were pieces that had a lot of tremolo, I didn't put them on the same
Right.
place. I don't want stuff, even if they're similar and they don't sound the same. I just like, okay, how do we separate? And I also wanted some representation. Each album has not enough, but it has a few women composers. There's a couple Japanese composers, Russian, Norwegian, Spanish. There's Anthony Green is the first BIPOC composer. It's not that I haven't tried for more. It's just I have a budget that can barely buy me a cup of coffee. So it's finding the composers who are willing who want to be a part of the project.
Right.
That's what it comes to. So, yeah.
Well, how long's the project going to last? It's been way longer than you ever expected so far. It seems like it's seen a lot of great success. Do we have volume 4 coming sometime soon?
Well, very cool is Stone Records, who released my first two my John Cage guitar album and Legend of Hagoromo. We came to a deal and they're reissuing all of the albums, my complete catalog. So they are reissuing the 3 new Lullaby albums, or Lullaby Project album, new Lullaby Project albums. And there's a deal for a 4th. So I am working on a 4th album. I have almost all of the lullabies for that. A couple need some editing, and I have to record a piece for electronics and guitar for the new music gathering that's happening in August. And the date for that recording is like the first week of July. So I'm like, oh, that changes everything. So I had planned to be in the studio at the end of June. There's still a chance of that, but we'll see. And yeah, there's 2 anthologies, as I mentioned, Nights Transfigured and Hushed. And here, I'll show you it. It's really cool. Super exciting.
Yeah, I've seen pictures on social media, but yeah, show it to everybody who's watching.
Officially, it'll come out on the 14th. PDFs are available through the American Composers Alliance. And then I have physical scores on Bandcamp, and contact your local music dealer because it's helped local business. And so when will it end? I don't know. I have other projects. Like, I made a list and it's like I have 6 other projects that I really need to. So I think after 2021, I will probably take a break from at least recording them. And I had another composer wrote to me 2 days ago, and I had helped edit a piece of his, and he's like, I wrote a lullaby. Is it still happening?
Am I late to the party?
Yeah, I mean, and I have a Brazilian composer wrote to me last month. He's like, I'm fine. He had written a beautiful viola guitar piece that I premiered with Michael Hall, and he's an amazing composer, Antonio Celso Ribeiro, and he's like, I'm writing you a lullaby. And everyone says that, I'm writing you a lullaby. And I'm like, sure, no pressure. And then I'm like, look, this 4th album is coming. You have to have it to me by this date. And he wrote to me a couple of weeks ago. He goes, you'll have it. Don't worry. You'll get it. So we'll see how quickly I can turn around get the piece, learn it, and record it. It might be that the album comes out in 2022, but it's cool. I have a Bach project of pieces that people don't play that I've arranged. A lot of piano preludes. It's fun. It's so awesome. Really cool. And then I have some Hovanes that I've arranged, and not just arrangements, but original pieces. Amazing composer, Alan Hovanes. Oh, he's kind of like, it's interesting. I premiered an arrangement that I did. There's a video of it that I did at UNC Greensboro. And I got more emails from people like, oh, that inspired me to go listen to this Hovanes and this Hovanes and this Hovanes. And he's kind of faded away a little bit, but I think he's an amazing composer. I think very worthy of being listened to substantially more. And guitarists, I know David Leisner recorded an album of his guitar concertos. He has like 5 concerti.
Yeah.
Like,
wow. I
How
knew
is
there was one. I didn't know there were five.
I think there's five. Yeah. And he has a number of sonatas. I have a piece that his widow sent me that is, I, bouche cousue. I'm buttoning my lip because I can't talk about it until I get it done. But very cool. And then I have another Cage album. I actually, before COVID, that was my project.
Uh-huh.
I went to Banff in Canada for a month, and it was to work on Cage. And Cage had been to Banff, and so I got a lot of original letters. And
Awesome.
so that was supposed to happen in 2020. And then I pivoted and went to the lullabies. So I have things to do. My
Sounds
wife
like it.
reminds me of that a lot. Yeah, she's
Well,
like,
let's not take up any more of your time. Thank you so much, Aaron, for joining us. The
"Thank you, Trevor."
album is
Drifting,
Drifting. I almost said Hushed. It's Drifting, available on Bandcamp from Stone Records,
and they'll be
anthologies of
streaming.
stores,
Yeah,
and there
and they'll
will
be
be
streaming in
streaming.
August 6th. All of the albums will be available worldwide for streaming. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Well, Aaron,
so
thanks so much. And
thank
let's
you,
let you go and get on all those other things you have to do.
thank you, Trevor. Have a wonderful day.
You too.